or screen. Nobody want to show your face anymore. Okay, I record now. Okay, done, Uti. All 4 screens have been saved and screenshot. Thank you, everybody.
Vuti, we can't hear you. You're on mute.
Welcome, everybody, to this second session on our Nature Hero Talk, Environmental Literacy. Today, we are focusing on climate change, and we're very glad to have 4 heroes with us, Clement, Saravanan, Dominic, and Rafiq. Thank you very much for making your time today and preparing the presentation for us. Okay, we look forward to it. Just some preambles first. So this is this talk is brought to you by M&S Malacca branch, and we actually a voice for nature and membership based. So for family membership, it's only 80 ringgit per year, and for youth, it's only 15 ringgit per year. And if your school is not yet a KPA Club Pencinta Alam school, kindly let us know, and maybe we can discuss with your teacher on how to actually create that particular club in your school. All right. For further details, kindly go to mns.my/join us. When you join M&S, you're not alone. You're part of a very strong network of 14 branches across Malaysia, right? The objectives of this particular talk will be to provide a basic understanding of the environment around us, the stars, the earth, the planet, the plants and the animals, and how we as human beings can take care of them. And also to encourage more students to take science stream, in particular in conservation and environmental courses. At the end of this program, we will have nature guiding courses in forest, in bird watching, as well as on the beach. And we hope to have regular camping at Port Dickson, okay, in Tanjung Tuan area. So the talk is about 45 minutes, and then we'll follow up with a 10-minute Q&A session. And so for questions, kindly key into the chat box. If you're watching now live from Zoom, if you're from FB Live, kindly key into the FB page itself, and Yen Yi will help us to consolidate from there and send it over to Lenisha for the Q&A session. All right. So during the Q&A session, we also have a quiz, and this particular quiz, we will have 5 prizes, and it is those 5 fastest submission with the highest marking. And each certificate will be sent to you via email if you achieve at least 70%. Just a reminder, the certificate will come a bit later, maybe a month later, because we need to send your information to the Ministry of Education for them to approve. Okay. So after this talk, the quiz and the recording will be put up on the app, and the quiz will be open for the next 2 weeks. All right. So you can still invite your friends to come and watch the video recorded version and also do the quiz. Okay. If you want to volunteer, you can contact me because we will provide training as needed. Prizes for today is sponsored by Turtle Conservation Society. Thank you very much, and also from Dominic as well. So we have some T-shirts and also this beautiful pin that is given by PCS, Turtle Conservation Society. So the talk, we're actually going through what we call an Eco Partners online app. There are many benefits. One of the main benefits is that students, once you get the certificate, you can actually get your extracurricular points awarded. So this is the outline until the 30th of October, and today we'll be focusing on climate change, all right, from our 4 musketeers. All right. So if you haven't liked our Facebook page yet, kindly take a moment to take a picture, take a scan, and then tap to like our page. Also YouTube as well. Okay. Today, I would like to thank our 4 heroes here. Clement, let me introduce them. Clement has worked in multinational companies. He has provided private tuition, but in the back of his mind, he's always aware of nature's distresses that is being highlighted through the press and also from personal experiences as well. So issues like global warming to ocean acidification. Since the pandemic, he has worked with the NGOs to teach children from low income about taking care of the environment, especially using green coding and 3D design. He will be focusing on the topic of engaging tomorrow's generation. So he will share on how Gen Z can be part of the solution for climate change. Our next speaker is Dominic O'Sullivan. He has a degree in zoology. I think his career is more towards hospital management, and he's just recently retired. He's been a resident for the past 4 years in Malaysia. He loves biodiversity, and he also loves the rainforest here. That's why he's living here. He's a member of MNS Selangor. He's actually recently trained as a climate reality leader, and he would like to raise more awareness on climate emergency. So his focus topic will be on the effects of deforestation. Our next speaker is Saravanan Sinaya. He is an environmental educator with Conservation International. He's also a founder of his company, AdPeak Private Limited. He's been working on the environmental area for the last 22 years, and his passion or kind of his mission is to protect what he loves, which is in case is nature and the people around him, and also to get others to come on board as well, so that we can all do our little bit for the protection of the environment. His focus topic will be on protecting future food security, how food is linked to our climate change. Okay. Our next speaker is Dr. He just would like to be called Rafiq. Okay, so I just call him Rafiq. Thank you very much for joining us. He's from Kuching, graduated with PhD and Masters from Hokkaido University in Materials Engineering. He is a climate reality leader since 2020. He lectures in private university regarding renewable energy and materials engineering. His desire or passion is to see that renewable energy as the main power source in the near future. And his focus topic will be on the future energy demand, on the deployment success and future of the renewable energy. Okay, so we will open the session with a short video, and then Dominic will take over, and then the speakers will rotate. Just a reminder to our audience, key in the questions you have in the chat box and also in the Facebook Live. Thank you very much. Over to you, Saravana, and then over to Dominic. Oh, I need to stop sharing. Huh? Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Some call me nature. Others call me Mother Nature. I've been here for over 4.5 billion years, 22,500 times longer than you. I don't really need people, but people need me. Yes, your future depends on me. When I thrive, you thrive. When I falter, you falter. Or worse. But I've been here for eons. I have fed species greater than you, and I have starved species greater than you. my oceans, my soil, my flowing streams, my forests. They all can take you or leave you. How you choose to live each day, whether you regard or disregard me, doesn't really matter to me. One way or the other. Your actions will determine your fate, not mine. I am nature. I will go on. I am prepared to evolve. Are you?
Hello, everybody. I think it's over to me now. My name's Dominic. I'm very pleased to be here with you today. And I will be talking to you about deforestation. Thank you very much to M&S for giving us the opportunity to be here. This afternoon, we'll be giving you a very brief insight into the climate crisis, its causes, effects, the glimpse of the future, particularly if we don't do enough, and what everyone here can actually do about that. Me, you, our families, our leaders, our employers, everyone. We've all got a part to play. Now, other speakers have already been introduced, Clement, Sravan and Rafiq, and we'll be talking to you on 4 particular areas between us. There are a host of others, but because it's such a big topic, we've chosen those. So I'm going to start by, if I can, share screen. Okay, if we can see that now. Excellent. So this is a photo that was taken in 1972 by the Apollo 17 mission. And you'll all be aware, I'm sure, the Apollo missions were the ones that went to the moon. And it was the first picture of the Earth fully illuminated that any of us ever saw. It changed the way that humanity thought about our common home. It's a little ball that spins around the sun in the void of space. And you can't help but be reminded that we are but a small speck in the vastness of space, isolated and fragile. And we all share that condition. This is a photograph from the International Space Station. And it shows the thickness of the atmosphere relative to the curvature of the Earth. It's not very thick, but it's so important to our survival and the reasons for our survival on Earth. While being very thin and being mainly nitrogen and oxygen, there's also a small element of other gases, one of which is carbon dioxide. And that is at the center of what we're talking about now. We are spewing out something like 152 million tons of man-made pollution, global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day. That's not small beer. Solar radiation passes through the Earth's atmosphere and most of it's absorbed, but some of it is actually reflected back out into space. Much of it is also retained. The problem we have is that by producing all these greenhouse gases, we are thickening that blue layer. And the effect of that is it acts like greenhouse gas and it starts reflecting more of the heat back in. It stops it escaping. That's the greenhouse effect. That's what's giving us a problem. Well, where do these greenhouse gases come from? Lots of sources. These are just a few. Some of them will be more familiar in this part of the world. We know the haze, we know forest burning, but much of our transport, our coal plants for producing our power, etc., industrial processes, huge sources there that massively affect the air that we breathe and the way that our planet survives. Fossil fuels then are at the center of this problem. And you can see from this particular graph how in the last few decades, the amount of fossil fuels that we've got there is significantly affecting building up in the atmosphere and causing problems for us. The global surface temperature, therefore, has been rising. Apart from a blip there in the 1940s, you can see a general trend since the beginning of the 1900s that the temperature has been going up. And since 1980, it's just skyrocketed, and it's continuing to do so, even though we know we've got a problem by doing this. 19 of the hottest years on record have occurred since just 2001. And then 2020, the information I haven't actually got to hand on here, but the last 5 years before that were the hottest. And I know 2020 has actually slipped into that little club somehow. One of the biggest effects we have is on the hydrological or the water cycle. You're probably all aware of this. You soon will be if you're studying. The oceans warm up and evaporate water into the atmosphere. It moves by the wind currents over the land. It rises as it gets pushed up by the land, gets colder, precipitates as rain or snow, depending on the ambient temperature there, falls down into the streams, into the rivers, and back into the ocean. It's a beautiful system, and it works very, very well until we actually start to disrupt the rainforests. And by taking all the forests away, it's helping to exacerbate the problem we've got with the rising temperatures and the rising water content. We now have far more frequent extreme weather conditions like this one. If you were standing at the center of that, you would have one hell of a shower, believe me. And it's becoming much, much more prevalent, probably 4 or 5 times more prevalent than it was 30 years ago. And the consequence of that amount of water falling is that the Earth is, as set up, just can't cope with it. So we inevitably get floods. This one happens to be a picture of a location in India in 2015. Those people were stuck there for ages. This one's more familiar, perhaps, and we're going to see it more often. Mainly, if you look back upstream, apart from more extreme weather coming in, dropping all its rain, there's less forest to absorb it, so we get the floods downstream. Causes all sorts of problems with crop soilage and pollution and so on. But the same weather systems disruption that moves the rain into different quantities in different places also takes it from other places where they've been used to having it. So you can get the other extreme, like here, Sao Paulo in Brazil. There's a strict correlation between hotter years typically having more fires, as these graphs show. Since 1980, just almost 40 years, as temperatures are slowly creeping up, more fires, more costs, more destruction, more release of CO2. Fort McMurray 2016 was a typical example. A fire started here, and within 3 days, it was so out of control because of tinder dry conditions that over 100,000 people had to be evacuated. Now, can you imagine trying to get 100,000 people out of an environment which has become that scary? Worldwide extreme weather catastrophes, there's only one way that graph is going. Again, in the last 40 years, they have gone up from around 200 to around 800, 400% increase. Each of those bands is bigger and more frequent. So our weather is being seriously affected. This glacier, 1935 in Greenland, now looks like this. And in less than a century, in fact, less than 80 years, it's disappeared. And the glaciers feeding it that have been there for thousands of years are now just trickles coming in from the sides. A recent documentary by David Attenborough has suggested that Greenland now is doomed to disappear. Its ice cap is going to melt, and that will affect sea levels. The top 10 cities, talking of sea levels that are most at risk in 2070, we may find that these cities are inundated unless we can do something to prevent that. Interestingly, 9 out of 10 of them happen to be in our region, South and Southeast Asia. In October 2014, Department of Defense made an announcement. Climate change will likely lead to food and water shortages, pandemic diseases. Does that ring a bell? disputes over refugees and natural disasters in regions across the globe. And it's happening. We're only starting to understand in recent years the effect of extra heat on crop production. If there isn't enough, if the conditions are too hot, it affects the amount of water that can actually get into the plants to create the crops anyway. So not only not enough water, but it will affect how the crops actually grow. Seriously, big problem. Climate emergency is also a medical emergency. We find diseases that were strictly tropical diseases in the past are spreading north and south as the band around the equator heats up and the hot air starts to move north and south. So the mosquitoes and other vectors move north and south, so that diseases that were once only common to the tropics are now found in extreme North America and Northern Europe. The cost of this carbon problem affecting all these areas is absolutely unmeasurable. A lot more can be added to that list. And while we see plenty about the state of the economy and how important it is to rescue the economy, there can be no doubt that the #1 threat to the global economy is climate change. So what about here in Malaysia? Well, Malaysia produces more than 90% of its electricity from fossil fuels, mostly coal. Coal is the absolute worst fossil fuel to be burning, and we are almost totally dependent on it at the moment. We've destroyed perhaps 85% of our natural forest, and we continue to do so. We're still doing it. You can still see applications to de-gazette this bit and de-gazette that bit. It's got to stop. Malaysia puts 95% of its waste into landfill. From landfills, you get emissions of greenhouse gases, particularly methane, which is much, much more of a problem than even carbon dioxide, and you get pollution of the groundwater. Malaysia is already facing a growing threat of water shortages, yet we continue to undermine the capacity of the forests to hold water for us, and we do continue also to pollute the water we've got. Most Malaysians do not appear to understand the climate change. That's been my experience. So many people I speak to, other than those becoming interested like yourselves, of course, and some professional and academics, they don't understand the climate emergency. Therefore, what's all the fuss about? But Malaysia also appears not to prioritize safeguarding the environment, nor enforcement of the existing environmental protection legislation, and we need to change that urgently. Okay. From this point, we're going to move on to the next speaker. So I'm going to invite Rafiq to talk to us about future energy demands. Over to you, Rafiq.
Thank you, Dom. I admit that the introduction is very nicely done, and I will continue from the topic that was discussed earlier on. So I'm going to start with the coal power, with us not that we don't have to use coal power plant anymore, and what are the kind of what's the kind of power that we can expect to be using as in the future. So just a moment, let me just set it up. I think you can see my screen, no problem. Hang on. Okay, I think you can see my screen. No, this one. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, good. So you can see what I'm starting with coal power plant here. So I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of my talk first. I will start with the current status and why people are moving from coal power plant. And afterwards, I will be focusing on renewable energy, but I will be emphasizing a lot on solar energy, for the very simple reason that Malaysia has a lot of sunlight, and as such, I'm going to be showing you what we can do probably in Malaysia. So as you can see here, even in the United States, they have started to move away from coal power plant, and they are not building any new ones. Even new ones have been proposed, but they are no longer going to be built, for the very simple reason that it's not going to be economical anymore, and as such, they're going to phase it out completely by 2033. Now it's 2021. It's going to be right when most of you have finished school. We're not going to be using coal power anymore. Like I said, it's not going to be economical. So what is going to be economical later on, we're going to see. And that is in the United States. But how about somewhere in a country a bit closer to us, which is in Australia? So um, for this example, they built a $1.2 billion coal-fired plant, and it has been written off as worthless because of cheaper competition from renewable energy, wind, solar power, hydroelectric, for example. And in China too, uh, they are adding a bit more by coal power. However, they will realize very soon that it's not going to be economical anymore because of the renewable energy. Now, what about in Europe? In Europe, you may have heard of Norway. So they have a lot of money that is kept under the sovereign wealth fund, and although they built this funding from oil and gas, they have started to move away from oil and gas investment. So they are investing on renewable energy. And as you can see here, there are a number of countries that have moved away from coal power. So they are going to be rapidly phasing it out. Some obvious examples, obvious reasons that they are moving away from it is that number one, it's no longer economical, and number two, it's severely polluting. And the third reason is that renewable energy has become more economical and cheaper. So if we keep using coal power or unsustainable power, our land is going to become like what you can see here. This is actually in Easter Island, somewhere in the middle of Pacific Ocean, very far away from us, but this is actually a stark reminder of what humans can do if our progress is not kept in check. So I'm going to be moving on to the solutions that we have. So this is something that you may take note of, is that enough solar energy reaches the Earth every hour to fill the world's energy need for 1 year. So if only we can capture 1 hour of sunlight a day very efficiently, we can power the whole world for a whole year. So there is actually great potential in solar power. So in the past, somebody made a projection. So in 2002, they predicted that the solar power will grow by 1 gigawatt per year by 2010, and 2010 was 10 years ago. Okay, 1 gigawatt is about 1 billion or 1,000 million watt. That is actually a lot. But the reality is that we have exceeded the goal by 17 times. So of course, that's a very good thing. And also, the solar energy market will actually grow by 1 gigawatt per year by 2010, and now we are in 2021. Last year, it was exceeded by 132 times. So there is demand, and there is actually very good supply. We can actually see in the number of solar photovoltaic PV, photovoltaic installation from the 1980s until 2020, rapid change since 2010. So there must have been a great awareness at that time, and the momentum is kept until now. And at the same time, the cost of solar panels have also dropped greatly. As you can see from 1976, it used to cost $79 per watt. This is actually a lot. And now it has cost about 1 ringgit per watt. So a lot of difference, and I can see that in the current progress there would be solar power would continue to become more and more cheaper. Okay, so a lot of graphs, a lot of numbers. So let's see examples of what people have done. For example, in Australia, more than 2.6 million houses have solar system installed. So not just for electrical power, but for water heating, for example. And this is 1 in 5 houses. That's like That's like 20% of houses in Australia. How about in Malaysia? I'm not sure myself. So now there's going to be a lot more pictures for you. You can see examples for in Saudi Arabia. They are planning to grow the renewable energy capacity from by 120 times by 2030, and that's 9 years from now. And in South Africa, they started to switch from coal-fired electricity to solar and other cleaner alternatives. And not just in the city, but also on the outskirts of the city, where this is basically the kampong or the village. Even they have erected solar power plants, as shown there. Now, how about this one here? This one shows a coal museum. So this is something that we can find interesting, because even the coal museum have started to use solar panels on top of their building. So even the coal museum wants to move away from coal, and that would be a very good thing, I think. And how about this one here? These are an array of solar panels in a high school in Arkansas. So it resulted in, because of the very efficient power usage as a result of these solar panels, the school have found out that they actually have a surplus of budget, and they could increase the salary of the teacher by $2,000 to $3,000 US per person. That's quite significant. So last year, even during pandemic, renewable energy made up about 90% of the new energy capacity that was added globally. So for example, in 3 countries, the US and China, and also India, you can see that a lot of it was from solar power, and to a certain extent, wind energy. So what's the reason that that solar power has been rapidly adopted? So there are 3 reasons for that. The cost have dropped sharply, and also the quality of solar panels have improved dramatically as well. And the third one could be surprising for you. Many low-income nations that they don't have landline for phone, so they have to charge their and as a result, people have to use a mobile phone. But if they don't have electricity, they're going to have to charge it sooner or later. So there is a need there. People have mobile phone, but they don't have electricity to charge it. So what they do is that they actually install solar panels on their houses to help power the electricity, to help generate electricity to charge their mobile phone. And as you can see here, there is a rapid increase in the phone subscription up to several billions in the past 5 years. That's actually a lot. And like I said, not everybody actually has access to electricity, as you can see here. Everybody has to connect to the grid. So what if you cannot do that? They actually do something like this. They put it on the roof of their hut. This is not even a house. This is actually a hut. And this is an example in China. They install a lot of solar power. They also move from non-sustainable electricity. And besides generating power for electricity, some farmers in India have used the electricity from solar power to run their irrigation, to supply water to their field. Now let's have a look at some other large-scale solar power facility. For example, this one in Egypt. As you can see here, this is actually big. On the left-hand side here, these are the solar power arrays. And the next one, I'm not sure if any of you have gone here. This is Vatican City, the capital of Christianity of the world. So technically, they will be the first country to achieve zero carbon dioxide emission. So although the Vatican have got on their side, they have realized that they also have to move from non-sustainable electricity generation and move to a cleaner power supply. I'll give you some other examples for what you can do, for example, in your houses. So this is in an apartment balcony in Korea. So very easily you can install on your balcony, for example, several solar panels as shown there. That will be enough to power your computer. And in Japan, large companies too, such as Honda, they built a renewable energy electrical vehicle charging station as shown here. And the last image here before I move on back to Dom would be in KLIA. I'm not sure if you have seen the roof up there on the international terminal, but they actually installed some portion of the roof are covered with solar power. So these arrays have generated about 26,000 megawatt of electricity per year. And this was part of the TNB, what's called the TNB feed-in tariff program. Okay, so before I end, I have shown you a lot of examples of renewable energy, especially solar power, for the very simple reason that Malaysia has a lot of sunshine, as you can see, and I think that we actually have a lot of potential to harvest the solar energy rather than getting it wasted, heating up our houses, and we have to use our electricity to cool our houses, for example. So I hope that it has been useful for you, and I would like to give control back to Dom. Over to you.
I thank you, Rafiq. It was worth coming on this just to learn a bit more about what's happening on the energy side of things. Thank you very much for that. Right, we'll get back into the slideshow. At least that's the plan.
Yeah, that was actually mine.
Nearly there, nearly there. Right, getting into things forest again. One thing we need to make clear right from the start is that we should not try to confuse plantations with forest. The only thing they share is that they are generally green. Apart from that, we have huge challenges. Looking at global tree loss in 2019, for example, Brazil was way up there in terms of the rate at which it was losing its forest. And we know that's still ongoing. Malaysia was 6th. If you go back about 10 years, I think you'll find that Malaysia and Indonesia were up in the top 2 or 3. But things have moved on. So it's not a good place to be. The differences are quickly referred to. The picture on the left, believe it or not, yeah, that's under the canopy in a beautiful part of rainforest. The picture on the right is how rivers look that meander through rainforest areas, generally pleasant looking, shall we say. Slower flowing, often very clear water. The canopy, back under the canopy, you've got a situation where you could have per hectare anything from 400 to 600 tree species and maybe more than 1,300 animal species in this part of the world. If you go to the Amazon, it's much greater than that, 3 times greater perhaps for tree and animal species. The forest ecosystem comprises massive water catchment areas and vast ranges of fruits and medicinal plants and so on. But when you compare that to a plantation, this is typically palm oil, we've all seen it, it's a monoculture. You know, there's none of that diversity in there. It's man-made, very few species, depends very much on fertilizers and pesticides, so it's not sustainable. And there's a destruction, in fact, of the critical life balance that have in rainforests, that all the elements of it work together and it becomes self-sustaining. This is not, and all the water that gets flushed off of there gets into the rivers with pesticides, with insecticides, causes pollution. We've already destroyed the water retaining potential of it, and therefore you get floods and damage downstream. Not good, and we've done it too much. I'll show you a bit more on that shortly. This is a map of the world which shows you the principal reasons why forests have been disappearing and for what reasons. If we look at the middle of the screen, Central Africa is about shifting agriculture, and most of Central Africa, where there was rainforest, has now been replaced by just savannas, grasslands, which are nowhere near as biodiverse or productive. The same is happening in the Amazon, and where the forest is going, it's being replaced by grassland. In North America and across northern parts of the northern hemisphere there, the brown areas are where there are wildfires. These are very sparsely populated areas, but they're becoming much drier, and therefore when they ignite, there's very little that can be done to get the resources up there to put them out, so they burn, and they just produce masses of methane and CO2 into the atmosphere, which adds to our global warming problem. The green belts are where much of the natural forest has been replaced by active forestry, some man-made stuff, and unfortunately, yeah, that's predominant. And then next of most significance for us is the orangey bits, because these show where the forests have been replaced, particularly for commodities like oil palm, like rubber and others, and you'll see the predominance of that throughout the Southeast Asian bloc where we are. This becomes more significant as I move on. This was Borneo in 1950 compared to 2020. It's I can remember visiting Borneo in the late 90s, and it was beautiful, lots of forest. But you can see even between 2000 and 2020 how much of it has gone. It's down now to about 30% of what it was, which is why all the hullabaloo we see about orangutans that are being displaced, among others. Fires in Indonesia we only know all too well. Peatlands in particular and rainforests, and when they burn, they release lots of CO2 and methane. Fires in 2019 from Indonesia released more CO2 than the fires in the Amazon, which was quite an astonishing feat. Children fleeing their burning forest home. Indigenous peoples are often displaced, and they end up with no home, nowhere to live, no food, no means of looking after themselves, and they are severely put upon and severely disadvantaged as a result of deforestation. And yet, with that displacement, they lose their cultural identity, they lose all the knowledge of the plants and the animals that live there and how they are dependent upon each other. I read a statistic that said probably only less than 2% of the known species of the forests have been, or of the forest species have been catalogued. So the other 98% we know nothing about, and we're destroying it, including all the medicinal plants that might be there. Kuala Lumpur, lots of haze in Kuala Lumpur, as we know, that has been plagued with, and it's very difficult breathing in that. We complain about it, but we're still not changing our habits very much. The same extra heat that evaporates more water from the ocean causes bigger downpours, as I mentioned earlier in the hydrological cycle. So when those heavier rain clouds come over the land, which has they come down very heavy, and where the land has become dry, it runs off. So you get more floods and downstream, and more destruction downstream. But because the drying out period is longer and hotter, these areas become barren, and you get droughts and loss of crops that way as well. So it's a vicious cycle once you get in there. In future, the climate in large parts of the Middle East and North Africa could render some parts uninhabitable, which will surely contribute to the pressure to migrate. Well, this map shows you what's happening. Those are the areas that we currently consider are inhospitable and uninhabitable, but in the next 50 years, it could look like that. If that is accurate, the whole of the Amazon may have gone. If this is accurate, Southeast Asia is in big trouble. We need to do something. The indigenous peoples of the world that I just mentioned, they live in territories that encompass about 22% of the world's land surface, but that 22% also harbors 80% of the planet's diversity. And from recent articles I've been reading, not many people may realize, but the biodiversity itself, being self-sustaining, is also part of what I can only compare to the planet's immune system that looks after the rest of us. As we encroach more into these isolated areas, we come into contact with pathogens that we are vulnerable to because we've not evolved any resistance to them. And it's clearly being demonstrated that there is a direct connection between this intrusion and the prevalence of pandemics that are coming up. We now risk losing up to 50% of all land species in this century. We've already reduced the populations of marine vertebrates by 49% at 2012. That's, well, they're down to well below 50% now. That's despite a moratorium in 1970. So there's lots of evidence that what we're doing in the rainforest isn't doing us any good, okay? It's just not, not to be done. We have to find ways of working better on that. Okay, at this point I hand over to Saravanan, who will give us an introduction to how we can help preserve our food chains. Over to you.
Hi, thank you, Dom. Thank you for that wonderful introduction as well as all the contents that you have shared. And that's exactly what I'm going to talk about regarding the deforestation, how we are contributing to all this deforestation. But let me just share my screen first. I'm a little bit of a dinosaur when it comes to technology, so just bear with me while I start up the screen. All right, students. Okay, so yeah, it's you know whatever that Dom as well as our friend Mr. Rafiq they have shared says a lot about human activities that is causing climate change, right? The kinds of greenhouse gas emissions and everything. And so we all need to fight this climate crisis, and that's really, really very important. But the huge question for all of us is whether are we concerned about this? So I'm sure most of you are very familiar with the use of Zoom, and I suppose that there is this chat function over there. So if you're able to just respond, can you just raise your hand or just respond on the chat function if you are concerned or not? Are you concerned? All right, yes, I see a few of you are raising your hands. That's fantastic. Can I see how many more of you are really concerned about this? And the reason why I'm asking this is because only if you are concerned, then you would want to do something. I am concerned, so that is why I'm doing something about this. And equally, all the speakers, they are very, very concerned about all of this. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for all of you who have responded. And that is what I would want to drive you to, right? So that we will be able to do something. And I'm very glad because most of you are students and young generation, right? And you are the future of the entire planet. And why I say that is because I myself started my passion for nature when I was somewhere around your age, right? So if you notice here in this next picture, okay, so this is where I grew up. So this is where I stayed when I was very young. You can see that house in the picture. That used to be the house that I lived in. And if you notice, there's a huge mountain at the back, all right? So it has always been fun because I was so connected to these mountains. My dad used to bring me to these mountains and we would just like go up and, you know, view the nature spaces, the animals, you know, we'll get to see lots of animals. And sometimes we'll just wait for sunset and come back down. And the feeling of getting in touch with all this forest and the animals, even the worms or the crickets, you know, all of this, right? It has always been a part of me, right? So and I was just like about 7, 8 years old at that point of time. So that is where I started. All right. And eventually I continued doing all of this, and I started going to more mountains, and I wanted to find out more about all these mountains, right? So I started going everywhere, different countries within Malaysia, to various kinds of landscapes, up high altitude, to the waterfalls and everywhere, So this has been kept me going, because it's like that kept me very close to nature. All right. But somewhere when I was around 7 or 8 years old, when I was watching a documentary, there was something that came up in the TV. All right. And that was Mount Kilimanjaro. And that's the mountain that's in the picture here. Okay, it's a huge mountain. It's the highest mountain in the continent of Africa, and it is one of the seven highest mountains of the world. Actually, when it comes to one by each of the continents, all right. And I was quite surprised as a 8 years old boy, because when I saw that, I was like wondering how come there is whitish something on the mountain, right? Because all the while at that age, I had only been seeing mountains that are green in color, right? Because all our Malaysian mountains are green in color. We only have trees at the top, right? So I was very curious, and I wanted to find out more. And I also decided that I would want to go to this particular mountain. All right. So, and eventually in 2018, I made my way there, and I was at Kilimanjaro, and it was quite shocking. Of course, I was very happy for being there, right? But it was quite shocking. The reason is because of this. In 1988, when I was looking at the mountain in the TV, that's what I saw on top. And in 2018, when we went there, the one that I saw was with almost 90% of the ice cap, what you see, the white colored part on top, is gone. And that's basically because of climate change, right? Because the heat has been increasing and the ice has melted quite a lot. And this is not just on Kilimanjaro, but it's happening at every other places, whether it's in the North Pole, South Pole, all the mountains, well, even in the lakes, right? Okay, so just to set back the scene, when we are looking at 800 years ago, right? I think this is the same information that has been shared before with you. That climate change has happened very much in the past, a few times. Okay, to be exact, there's been 5 times that we have recorded, and temperature has been increasing. So concentration of carbon dioxide was also increasing quite a lot. But if you notice, very much at the end of this graph, in the past century, the temperature has increased quite a lot because of the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. All right. So when it used to be about 300 ppm, the highest in the past 1,000 years, but now it has gone to 400 ppm in just past 100 years, and that's crazy. And if we notice another data here, since 1850 to current, the last about 20 years, the increase has been drastic and it has been continuously increasing, and it's expected to increase more and more. Right. And when we look at the kind of emission, the kind of greenhouse gas emissions over here, we can see that it is energy sector that is taking up most of the emissions into the atmosphere, right? It's about 73.2. But there is a huge part that is coming next to energy, which is agriculture, forestry, and land use, that is coming to 18.4. All right. And that's quite high, actually. Okay. So, do you want to fight climate change? That's the most important thing, because as Mr. Rafiq has said earlier, the authorities, a lots of industry players are already doing their part about changing the way that energy is being produced, going to sustainable energy sources like solar panels and everything. But the thing is that it's not enough. We need to do more. So we need to play our part, right? And when I say we have to play our part, a lots of people, whenever I talk to students, one of the favorite question from students is, how? How do I do that? What can I do? Right? If the government is doing something, or maybe the industries, they're the huge people and they can do something, but what can I do as a student? Well, I'm here to tell you that you are able to do a lot. And one of the big things that you can actually choose to do is reduce food waste. All right. Reducing food waste can really fight climate change. And let me explain to you why. All right. So in many countries, there are more food in the landfill than any other single materials. All right. Even in Malaysia, right, there's a lots of food that becomes food waste and ends up in the landfill compared to every other kinds of materials out there. And this is making the climate change worse. All right. And here's what's happening. All right. When food rots, all right, it produces methane. Okay, methane is a greenhouse gas, and that is actually a greenhouse gas that is 28 times more potent than carbon dioxide. All right. So if you think that carbon emission into the atmosphere is dangerous, it's going to increase the temperature. Now, methane's exposure, methane's emission into the atmosphere is going to be 28 times even more deadlier than carbon dioxide. And that's going to be scary, right? All right. And food waste emission contribute to global warming almost as much as road transportation. So if we are saying that, because of cars and motorbikes and the planes and the ships, all those carbon emissions, because of transportation is a lot, that's how much we are emitting because of global food waste. All right. And that's very, very scary, because you don't see it, at least on the transportation part, you can see it and you can say that, okay, I can do something about it. But this, if you don't see it, then you won't know that it is even happening, right? Okay. So there are some studies that has been made, and this, if you notice in this particular table, there is scenario 1 and scenario 2, and of course, various scenarios has been put in place. So if let's say we are looking at about currently it's about 1.1, 1.2 degrees Celsius of increase of temperature. And if we are looking at the average temperature of 1.5 degrees Celsius, that comes to be scenario 1. And if we are looking at 2.0 degrees Celsius as the breaking point, then it is in scenario 2. But whichever it is, you can see that reduce food waste will, if we are able to reduce food waste, that will help bring down that much, about 87.45 or 94.56 of gigatons of CO2 equivalent. All right, any kinds of greenhouse gas, but that much of CO2 equivalent. And that will be helping quite a lot. You see, so reducing food waste. And this is a study that has been done, and it is by scientific research. All right. So now you might be asking, why? How come food? What's with food? How come food is causing this climate change, right? So now let me show you this. Most of us know that, or at least through my explanation, the food that is being wasted is actually ending up in the landfill, and that is creating the methane, right? And that's a greenhouse gas that is going to be very dangerous. But then another part that many of us know is this, right? In the food process life cycle, we know that there is the food comes to the rubbish bin because it's being thrown, and the food waste part of it, and the food is on your plate and it's on the supermarket, and all of these parts are as part of the food process life cycle. But many of us don't see that transportation, and here the manufacturing, the production, and the rearing of the animals as well as the agriculture is also playing a part and is part of the food process life cycle. And what happens before that? This deforestation. All right. So all of this is actually part of the food process life cycle. So if you think that by you throwing the food and that is where you are contributing to it, no, you are wrong, because every other process before that is already contributing to the emissions of greenhouse gases. And when you are wasting it, and it becomes like whatever processor that has been in place before that goes to waste as well. All right. So if you're looking at the deforestation, here, when you can see that the land used for vegetables and food production, when you see in Malaysia, we are popular with our paddy field, right? And for the paddy field, how much of land that is being used. And if you go to the nurseries of vegetables and the fruit farms and everything, how much of land? Do you think that the land was just available there and suddenly we just went in and just planted? No, of course not. What we did is we have to take down the trees that was already there, and then we put up with all these crops that is needed for our food production. And also for the animals that we eat, right? For the meat production, whether it's a chicken, it's duck, it's the cows and the goats, the lambs, everything, right? So all of that takes up a lot. And a shocking number that I would want to show you is this. just globally, the amount of the number of animals that is being reared, or just when it's about sheep, goats, and the cows, right? There is about 4 billion that is to feed humans. And when I say 4 billion, 4 billion is this much, right? And that's a huge number. It's more than million, right? It's 4 billion. Humans in the planet is about 7 billion plus, close to 8, and 4 billion is just for us to be fed, right? And not just that, once we actually do that, this conversion of land is contributing to the emission of carbon. All right, why carbon when we are removing the plants, right? Basically it's because we are degrading, and the destruction of this carbon rich natural ecosystem is causing the carbon that is stored inside the forest, inside the soil, to be released. Okay, so this is a huge the simple science that you can actually see how nature stores carbon, the carbon from the leaves, in the roots, in the soil, and even in the dead wood as well as the dead leaves. All of it has got carbon. And when we remove it, all of this is actually coming up into the atmosphere. So the first part, in the deforestation itself, we are already contributing so much of carbon emission. Here's a scientific study that has been made, which shows that the different kinds of forest that contains the different level of carbon, and knowing this is quite important so that we know what can be touched and what cannot be touched. All right. And deforestation itself is accounting about 11% of human caused greenhouse gas emissions. And if the forest is being kept intact, right, remain intact, so we don't take it down, tropical forest alone accounts for at least 30% of the global mitigation action, all right, needed to stop climate change. And that's huge, right? And that's not that, it's also causing loss of habitat and a loss of food source for the animals. And apart from that, very quickly, if I want to touch on the fruit production itself is causing a lots of greenhouse gas emission. By rearing animals, we are releasing methane and carbon. By fertilizers for the plants, we are actually releasing carbon over there as well. And if you're looking at transportation, when we are bringing the food, right? You know for yourself, most of us, our food don't just come from Malaysia or any other countries. They don't just come from their own countries. It's most of the time brought from different places, right? Even when you eat rice, when you are buying rice in the supermarket, where does it come from? Not all of the rice packets that's there is actually Malaysian products, right? Some comes from Indonesia, some comes from Thailand, some comes from India, and various parts of the world. So this is actually causing a lots of gas emissions, right? Transportation is huge. Okay, and so this is one part of the process that we will need to see. And then when it comes to the landfill, of course, as I was explaining earlier, methane is released. And even if you say, you know, some of us will be saying, no, it's okay, the food is not going to the landfill, I'm composting it. Well, composting itself is going to create some greenhouse gas, right? So it is also not good. And why, if we can finish eating it, why do we need to even compose it, right? So those are some of the things that we will have to see. So over here, food waste emissions contribute to the global warming as much as the road transportation, and you have seen it earlier as well. And the solutions in hand are plenty, right? We can actually make sure that you know, the farm irrigation is being done in an efficient way. The forest protection is in place, grassland protection like the ones in Africa, improve rice production. You know, those are some of the things that can actually bring down the greenhouse gas emissions. Taking plant-rich diets can actually help a lot when it comes to climate change or the climate crisis. All right, and when I say plant-rich diet, it is because, you see, we are saying that a lots of land is being used for rearing of animals, but the point is that those animals will also need to eat, right? And they are eating grasses and other kinds of crops from plants. So you are doing one process of taking the land for plantation, and that plants are being fed to the animals and the animals are being fed to us. So there's a huge amount of loss over there as well. So all of this is being done by authorities, and lots of this is also being supported by governments. But if I would want to say that if you can do something, reduce food waste is something that you can choose to do. And not just about reducing food waste, all right? But you can also make sure that you are taking only what you need, because once you do that, you are able to protect 87.45 gigatons of CO2 equivalent inside the soil. And at the same time, you are able to make a further contribution of 65.01 gigatons of CO2 equivalent, from being emitted into the environment. So, final say, take only what you can eat and don't waste. Can I just again get a raise of your hands if, let's say, you can choose to do this? Can I see how many of you can do this? Right, I see the numbers increasing. All right, there's quite a big contribution over there. Wow, that's great. Okay, so that's almost like about 42, 43. Yes, there's a lot of you who can actually do this, and the number is at 50 now. All right, so if this is one thing that you can bring back home and you can do it, you are really contributing to the fight, the fight that we are actually together making to reduce or to bring down this climate crisis. All right, thank you very much. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hand this over to Clement, who's going to take it up next. Clement, over to you.
Hi there. Good afternoon, students and teachers. Okay, I hope you guys are doing well. Okay. Okay, thank you, Saravanan, for the sharing. It's very nice to see that there's something that we can do in hand. That's something that's in our hand that we can do for now, like we don't have to wait. Okay. Okay, now I'm gonna move on to the next part then. So my part is going to be slightly different. Reason because I am also an educator, but in a different way. Okay, how is it? I'm gonna start my share screen and we shall continue with this. But meanwhile, let me share my screen. Okay. Okay, all right. I think all of you are seeing this. All right. So, okay, to be honest, to start this off with, I'm quite nervous. Okay, because usually I do my work quietly. I don't usually share many people. When people ask me, then I'll share. Otherwise, I just keep quiet. So I'll keep things light and simple. If anything, please bear with me for now. Then, okay. My name is Clement. As you can see here, my title, it says, "Let the Young Design Tomorrow." Okay, the reason is very simple. Okay, when I put this title, then how many of you actually liked it? You know, the kids are saying, "Yay!" or "Nah," you know, we don't need to. Okay. Oh, I can see people raising hand. Okay, that's good. All right. Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I'm very happy to see some people actually raising hands for this. Okay, the reason why I'm happy is because the world that we are in right now, we really do need a lot more work being done by the young ones then. Okay, so let me move on. We don't have much time. Okay, so does this sound familiar here? Can you really trust the young one? Huh? Okay, we will come back to this later. But first one, can we really trust the young one? Two, how can you so really trust them more? So young. Or number three, then teach them enough lah. No time to take action. Where you know got so many things to do. Or number four, ask them to talk properly. Also cannot take action. Okay, I don't know how many of you have heard this or heard someone said it to you. I personally have encountered both. When I was much younger, people said this to me. When I got into the education world, when I'm teaching, people are asking me this then when I am doing this program with the young ones. Okay, but I'm not keeping this all to the end of the sharing. Why? Because there are something that we need to talk about before we talk about climate change first. Okay, let's have a reality check here. Okay, first thing first, I think we can quite say that a lot of students these days are feeling restless. Okay, you have a full belly of knowledge, you know, but there's no way they deem meaningful to use it in. they rather spend their time on YouTube or saying, telling you they want to be a YouTuber. And why not? Because it's interesting, it's fun for them. They get themselves out of this whole, so-called stress that this thing that they are putting in there. Okay, so I would say let them channel their emotion. In this case, it's their restlessness. It could be frustration, it could be anger, it could be sadness. Channel that emotion into action, because emotion is energy. So put it into action. There's a lot of problem, but take the action to solve it. It's much more important than just say you want to take an action. Okay. Second, this one, if you guys have this, you don't have to raise hand because it can be a bit controversial. This is what growing up I heard, I feel, okay, and also now I'm teaching, students are telling me this. Adults tell me to be creative, but they don't allow us to be creative. What? Then they will tell us, what's the proper way to be creative? I don't know. Okay, it can be controversial. But think of it this way then. It's not to find fault. No one is at fault here. On one hand, the students are trying to think what's best for them at that moment. We were trying to be creative here. But on the other hand, the teachers also, hey, I cannot let you guys go so wild. No, you guys go creative early, do all kind of weird thing. And then I got in trouble, man, So that's why it's no one's fault here. Students and parents or adults, teachers need to work together. So no one is at fault. Move on accordingly, okay? Then the next one. There's more opportunity. Sorry, what had I done? Okay, so the last one here, there's more opportunity than ever to actually make the difference. I don't know about you all, but growing up, there were a number of situations where I heard things like, all the great things has been created already. What else to make them? What else to change? Everything has done them. So why do I need to, think that? But growing up, I have worked in a bank before, and I also work in there was a British bank, and I also work in a Japanese electronic company before. Yeah, I can hear you, but can you mute yourself? Thank you. Okay. So where was I? Oh, okay. So I worked in these places before, and the sharing from the general managers of saying that that they are lacking creativity from you guys. Okay, so instead of blaming anyone on it, so just look at the issue, find a solution, and move on. Okay, because there are plenty of opportunities for you to make a difference there, so you don't have to feel stuck about this one. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Okay, I don't know how many of you can read this one. This one is a Chinese saying that, but the meaning actually says the young one is always better than the previous. It can be controversial. Hang on, don't fire me yet. Okay, the reason is we can't use current knowledge to solve the issue in hand. I mean, if we have it, we would have solved it. Climate change has been around for many years, but we still haven't solved it yet. But if there's one thing I know is that the young one usually have the idea. Okay, you look at airplane, you look at smartphone. All these are actually coming out. I mean, someone would have the idea, well, it would be nice to have this. But usually it's the younger one after that comes up the solution for us then. Okay. Next one, for young ones, some of you might feel helpless. I mean, just now you look at the sharing from Dom. Oh my God, you look at the forest is burning, you look at the water is coming up, like you just, I don't know about you, sometimes I just feel like, well, just turn off the device, don't look at it anymore. But it's important for you to look at it and say, you know what, let's see what I can do. Because taking action actually helps you to get rid of that helplessness. It actually helps you, okay? Last one here. Climate change is not just about the iceberg. Yes, it's not just about the polar bear, yeah? It can be anything from, there have been more homeless people. Why? Because rising sea level, houses will be, flooded, you're losing place to grow, or Yeah, your nasi lemak might be more expensive. Why? Because a lot of our rice currently is being imported, actually. So now we have to depend on even more import, which the other countries that are supporting might also be stressed out, and so they might raise the price even more. So it could be a problem for all of us. Okay. Now, easier said than done, right? So how to say this now? Like what I said then, trust the young has a solution, because it's not the age, it's your ability. You think you can do the things, do it. But the trust from the previous generation usually boosts our confidence. It empowers us to make the connection and to make things happen. Okay, don't take my words. Look at this story again. All right. Next one, ask the young for a solution. They usually have it. Okay. Be open-minded and take action is two things that I would combine them together, because in order to get something done, it might be rough. Some of the ideas coming from the young ones, I know it can be so naive and rough. Some adults might definitely think this. You might be laughing at it. I know, I've heard it. But if you really sit down and think about it, how nice would it be if it's actually possible? Cutting down forests. Why? Because we need to make plants of inflation, because we need to make food. Adults will say this to you. But if you tell kids today's kids will say, why don't we just build a platform and live in the sky? Then like, we don't have to disturb anything on land. It would be so nice. But then, you know, our current knowledge and we're thinking it's like, what? Nah. Okay. So that's why instead of shutting them down, let's just keep an open mind. Okay, say, all right, that's what you want to do. Okay, let's see. Now let's start somewhere first. The idea here is to let their idea roll somewhere. Let the idea roll. Let it start somewhere. Let it roll. Let their mind works, because that's what the current working world are saying. Then the minds are not working. So let the mind works. Let them face the obstacle. Let them handle the emotions. You know, let them solve the problem. Repeat it, because they need it. Because they need to guide a future generation. Okay. All right. Now I come back to this. Many are asking me now, can I trust the young? We need to trust the young because our life depends on it. We do not have time to wait until they graduate, and because the signs are telling us that we only have 10 years. Okay. How can I be so readily trust them? Again, it's not their age, it's their ability. I've seen the young ones come together and get things done. Okay, I've seen it in action. You can Google Ascendance later. It's quite a fabulous team that later I will share. Third one, teach them enough lah, no time to work. This one, make time for it. I have been to some places where they actually make it into an after-school curriculum. Okay, they don't have time during their curricular school. They make it an after curriculum, and then if you are a parent, okay, if you're a parent, try to make it as an activity in the family. Later I will share more on what activity here. Okay. This one, for far too long, we have been saying that, let's link studies with real life experience. But if you really think about it, is this working? I don't know about you all, but for me, my experience is telling me that if you can somehow link when you spark their curiosity through some usually activity, usually hands-on activity, it usually ignites their desire to learn more. That's what I've realized. Okay, no one said this journey is easy, by the way. Yeah, it's a whole journey that has to go into their character itself, because if the character is not set up for it, the climate crisis is going to be a disaster for them. Okay, the climate crisis, all of them, they're just going to be paralyzed, sit there and look at you, and you yourself don't have a solution for it. So, okay. All right, this is the one that I said. And this team, Ascendance, 5 of them was able to pull out a team of youngsters. Some of them are even just 9 years old, to run an online conference for 5,000 students. I think a lot of us adults don't even get to reach 1,000 students, and they got to pull it to 5,000. So check them out, then Ascendance, for more info on this one. I really like their approach. Okay, so this is my final closing here. So for all of you who wants to start somewhere, in school or out of school, it doesn't really matter as long as you make it fun. Okay, you can, as simple as having a glass and say, put sugar in there and say that amount of little sugar, it's your carbon dioxide. That amount of lime of yours is your lime. Then then the amount of ice is your oxygen, or that amount of water there is your hydrogen. Then you can laminate. So it's something that you can learn and play with at the same time. Don't get them to cut the line; they will squeeze all over the place. You can. It's quite fun. Ask them for their opinion. Okay, am I doing all right? Have I wasted energy? Am I achieving what I set for? Because setting end goal, it's ultimately if you can't set an end goal, then no plan would ever go anywhere. Then food waste, if you don't set an end goal to finish your food, guess what? Ayah enough lah, tak payah lah. Why? Because habit pattern is tak payah lah, throw it lah, cannot finish, throw it lah. You won't think of other ways to handle it. Like, for example, maybe before I eat, I share this with my my friends or whatnot. Then, so setting an end goal, it's very important. Make the well-being of people and environment a lifestyle. This is very important. Why? Because in the future, you guys are going to be either accountants, scientists, whatever you want. But keep this at heart. Okay? The well-being of people and the environment needs to be at your heart. Because if you go out, let's say you want to be an accountant, if your boss is going to give you a contract that says, now this is a program, I'm going to do this, it's going to pollute that river, it's going to shut down that forest. You as a person who is going to approve that deal, you can ask them, hey, this is going to make a lot of homeless people. This is going to make Malaysia fail our Paris Accord. Then that cannot be. Then that cannot be the thing. Then So these are some of the things we need to have when we are young, so that we keep it to us until we become an adult. And last one, it's not about whether or not do I deserve this or am I bad for the nature. It's what you do with the resources you have here. Okay, so take what you need, feel happy with yourself, because negative feeling do not make changes last. And no action would last with your feeling of burden or a negative feeling. Okay, so I would say my closing, I'm closing now. Then, oh my God, I'm over that. So I'm closing now. I would say now for you is that choose a world problem that you're passionate about. It could be for food, for the food crisis that we are going through. It could be for the energy crisis we're getting into. It could be for educations. It could be for all kind of things that you feel passionate, you want to change and make it better. Start with that one. And then be happy with yourself. Then fix the, imagine that, what would you feel if the problem is not there to begin with? Okay, in this case, it could be for food. And if food crisis is not there, what would you feel? That, ooh, I can eat whatever I want. Okay, so imagine that one. And then, of course, the last one here is be happy as a person. Okay, be happy. Then go and fix things that don't make you feel good. Because if you're not happy, nothing will work. If you're not happy, you are just going to be a hub for negative energy, and you will not make any change, and people around you will be influenced by you, and nothing much will change as well. Okay, so I hope this, I'm stopping now. So, but before I stop, can I have a quick share of your mind then as to what's actually in your mind when I share all this? Okay, what do you think that? What can you? What do you passionate about? What's something that you want to change? Share this in the comment box. Share this in the chat room. Okay, all right. Okay, I'm closing my. Thank you. How do I?
All right. Thank you very much, Clement.
Welcome.
So we started with very, very big and serious problems of deforestation, food security, and energy as well. And so we ended up with a very positive note that you, as young people, can do it, can make a difference. All right, pick something that you are passionate about, and let's go and do it. Right. So we now move on to Q&A session. We have for 10 minutes. Then because we're a bit over time now, so I'll pass over to Lenisha. The quiz is already open. I think some already completed. All right. So Lenisha, we try to stick to about 10 minutes. All right, over to you.
All right, Mr. Wadi, thank you so much. So, a very good afternoon to the distinguished panel of speakers, Mr. Saravanan, Mr. Clement, Mr. Dominic, and Mr. Rafiq. So, I'm Linisha, and I'll be conducting another exciting Q&A session. So, this time we are joined by not only one, but four amazing and incredible speakers sharing their thoughts and opinions on climate change. So, thus, dear audience, please do not miss out on this opportunity and start keying in your questions. And also you may unmute your mic as well. So without further delay, I'm going to start the first question for today. So the first question is, if the climate change causes effects to humans and animals, what is the action that we should take to overcome it? That is the first question.
And anybody from the panel want to take on it?
Okay, I think I will answer this one. First of all, I'll just keep it simple. In my opinion, what causes climate change, first of all, is human consumption. So what we can do is to reduce our consumerism, is to reduce our material consumption, because by reducing our consumption, we are going to reduce the waste, and also at the same time we reduce the carbon emission that goes into producing the product or manufacturing the product that we are supposed to use, but somehow it ends up as waste, for example. So how about the other panels? What do you think?
All right. Dom, go ahead, Dom.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was Zuti. I beg your pardon. It's interesting. The question really is a good nail to have a go at, because at the moment our society isn't that geared up to reducing consumption. Everything in around us is about increasing consumption. I bought a new phone recently. It wasn't the up-to-date model, but I'd only had it a few days and I was getting pounded by the latest one, which is 2 generations up. I thought, I've only just bought the last one. I don't need it. I want this one to last. I bought a TV, the first TV ever that failed after 2 years. And I was told I'd have to throw it all out because of one bit of something that has failed. There used to be an expression about waste not, want not. You don't hear it these days because it's not in vogue, is it? If we want to help animals and plants and the general environment, we must reduce our consumption. We must reduce our must-haves, our wants, and wouldn't it be nice? And if we can get round to being content with what we've got, then that would help considerably. The other areas that we're looking at are all symptoms of the same thing. And if we, it was interesting, your loop about the food process, it was all coming back to starting with the forest. Well, if we can regulate the other bits, our demand on the forest would be less, and our demand on the land would be less. So all that has got to happen. We need to raise the awareness in our society of the consequences of how we live at the moment. And we need to do it immediately.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree with Dom and Rafiq on this, because yes, we know that consumption is the huge part of it. I mean, all the productions, human activities that is causing the whole thing. And again, as we have mentioned again and again in the talk earlier, the climate change has happened before in the past. This is not the first time it's happening, so we need to bear that in mind. But the only thing is that now it is happening faster than ever before. If previously it took like a few thousand years to happen, now it's like coming up like in just 200 or 300 years, and we might be hitting it, right? So that is one of the main thing. And unfortunately, I mean, not to dampen anyone's spirit on fighting climate change, but unfortunately, the industry, the manufacturing industry, is designed in such a way that it's driving people to consume more. So Dominic was right on the point earlier, right? It is that way. So one of the examples that we can take is plastic. So in plastics that we are using, in fact, plastic is also causing climate change quite a lot because it's also from the crude oil, part of the oil industry's way of doing it, right? So plastic became very popular during the World War II, right? World War II, and plastic became very popular, and so a lots of military equipments, military materials were produced using plastic, and that was like the fastest way of producing the materials that they needed. But somehow, after the World War II, the entire plastic industry became a doom because there's no other use, and of course, you don't have any more war, then you don't produce all the military materials anymore, right? So what happened was in around 1950s, billions of dollars was dumped into this plastic industry so that new methods can be found on how plastic can be used so that plastics can become the consumer material after that. And imagine in 1950s, if billions of dollars has been pumped in just to make plastic become a needed item that we can't afford to lose anymore, and we have to start using it continuously. Do you think in 1980s or 1990s or 2000 or 2020s, we are going to reduce that? So the industry is going in such a way. All that we can choose to do now is that if we reduce the demand, probably that demand will cause the industry to change its pattern. So that is one possible way that we can choose to do that.
Yeah, that's right. That now I think that the focus here is for far too long. I think what we are saying here is we are just mitigating the outcome. That we are mitigating things. That we reduce plastic usage and all this. It's just to mitigate the or to prolong that so-called worst scenario from happening. That's why I personally have been advocating that the younger generations to actually set things up. That what we need here is not more mitigation, but still needed. Because there are many things to do. But ultimately, I'm hoping that the young ones. I mean, if you're, just find the right environment and to actually come up with a solution for this. And when I say solution, it's not just one thing rules all. Yeah. If you look at plastic, there are also many kind of plastic there, for all kinds of different things there. So come up with something to suit for that particular item or for that particular task and move on from there. Okay. All right. Next question.
Okay.
Lenisha, sorry, maybe we just have one more question as we are running out of time.
Okay.
No.
So this is the last question. So how many percent of Malaysia's power is produced from solar? So I think this is directed to Mr. Rafiq.
Well, honestly, I can say I'm not actually aware how much because of the because we've only started to have a systematic solar power production on in houses, and only since the past 5 or 6 years we have been getting there are more and more solar farms being constructed. So sadly, I cannot say how many percentage, but what I can say is that it's not significant enough because there's simply no, it hasn't made a significant impact yet. But I can see that with the adoption of more and more solar power, and I think one of the questions was asking how about the cost. Of course, if you want to substitute your whole house electricity generation with solar power, is going to be extremely costly. But don't think of it that way. You can actually scale it down to power up a device that you are going to be using regularly. For example, your laptop or your PC. You don't actually have to substitute your whole house by going off grid, for example. And I think that as the years go by and as the power provider TNB in West Malaysia, and in Sarawak, that would be the Sarawak Energy. As we see more and more solar power being adopted, then I will be back with a better answer for all of you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, speakers. So I pass it to Mr. Woody.
Thank you, Lenisha, and thank you all our speakers. So we have to cut it short because of time. So let us close the session. This is the follow-up action. So we've really spoken of action that is needed. So this is for all the participants here. We will give away the 50 eco points inside the app. So make a short video, 1 minute or less, my hero action to help the world. So it can be anything from what has been shared today or whatever you heard outside of the day as well. It's also acceptable. So things relating to energy, deforestation, to food, to youth action. All right. Upload to your Facebook and then hashtag us, MNS10 Malacca and Nature Hero. And you can put, after that, you put this into the particular app that you're in now, okay? So you can see in the app here, there's a section called, there's a button named My FB Climate Change Action Video. So you copy the link and then you add into this particular app and add a photo, and then we'll give you the 50 points, all right? So now we move over to the quiz result. Okay, let me try something. Some cheers and clapping, okay? You guys hear it? That's my new toy. Okay, let's go to the Eco Partners app itself. So this is live. It is live in the app, so I'm just gonna go and grab the result for you. So there'll be 5 prizes today, and the winners can message me your address. Okay. So we had 200 participants today, and 63 submitted the quiz. Okay. Dang, dang, dang. So here we have here the result, quiz result. So we had okay, there are many people 100%, but I will only take the first 5 that submitted. So I was watching it when during the Q&A. So Dealini, Nofatini, Nodina, Mumtaz, and forgive me if I mention this incorrectly, Pugalendi, okay? So these will be the 5 winners for the quiz. So please message me your through WhatsApp your address, and then we arrange the prizes for you. Okay, congratulations. Let me give you one more cheer. All right. So very positive notes there from Clement to actually look at how we can solve this huge problem we have, okay? So all the youngsters kindly take note, and all the parents also and teachers kindly help the youngsters, all right? So next talk is on the 10th of July. It's already inside the app, and we'll be looking at how we can actually save our night sky from the pollution, okay? So Amiro will be sharing on that. And would like a big thank to all our volunteers, our speakers, Jerafik, Saravanan, Clement, and Dominic, and Lenisha and Yenyi, and also Linda, our quiz master. And a big thank you to all of you, our audience, for joining us. So I'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. And until then, take care and stay safe. All right, bye for now. Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice day.
Bye bye.
Yes.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Great weekend.
Very nice talk, guys. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Okay, stay safe.
you for coming, everybody.